Did you guys know that next to dentists, photographers are the single most hated professionals in the world? That may or may not be true, but what I can tell you is that if you jam a camera in somebody's face, it does tend to bring out the most horrible and most aggressive sides to their personality. All right, welcome back to the Smash Cake on YouTube. I'm Daniel Troutman with thesmashcake.com and troutmanphotography.com, and I can tell you, after photographing clients for over 20 years, that you are eventually going to cross paths with an aggressive or irritable client. Now, the difference between getting paid on the project and getting a negative review on Google simply lies in the way that you handle it. Now, my mantra, of course, at my studio is life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it. Now, before you pat me on the back for putting such a profound statement out into the universe, I do have to come clean and admit that that is the title of a very good self-help book by a man named Charles Swindoll. Now, in that book, you will find a whole lot of mindset shifting advice that really changed my life. And I took some of that advice and I kind of molded it into the photography world so that it applies to us photographers. And that's how I came up with today's list, okay? So it is a little bit of Charles Swindoll, it's a little bit of Daniel Troutman, but it's a whole lot of experience coming at you for free, dude, for free. So just stay tuned. Okay, so the first thing that I do with a difficult client is I do this with every client. I have a pre-shoot consultation where the client comes in and I meet with them. Now, in this consultation, it gives me a chance to figure out their personality and identify anybody with an A-type or strong personality. And it also gives me an opportunity to come up with a plan, because there is nothing more that an A-type personality hates than not knowing what's going on. That drives them completely bananas, and they oftentimes spin out if they don't know the plan. So what you do is you have that consultation where you and your client come up with a plan together. You collaborate together. And when you create a plan together, then later on, when you're on the actual shoot and that client wants to go chase rabbits, they want to go down a couple of rabbit holes, and you could always pull them back in by saying, remember that plan that you came up with? Or I loved that plan that you and I came up with. Let's stick to that because I know that's going to work. And by reminding them that they helped you come up with that plan, they take ownership of that plan and they're more likely to acquiesce to that request. And that's a great way of kind of softly pulling them back in, or kind of pulling the reins back in and getting your client back on track. And like I said, because you have that plan, they're not going to spin out because they know what the plan is. So it's a perfect way to deal with clients even before you start the photo shoot. Just have that consultation and make that plan and just use it as a fail-safe. All right, well, your client made it through the consultation. You didn't fire them, but you get on set and they start acting out. Well, what you need to realize, rather than just getting aggressive and getting angry yourself, is you need to realize that that is an insecure human being in front of your lens. 9 times out of 10, lashing out or bad behavior, it really just comes from a place of your client's own insecurity. And once you take a deep breath and you realize that this person might actually be scared, all right? And if that's the case, what they need you to do at that point is to empathize and listen. So when my client starts hitting me with aggression or starts hitting me with little jokes, little jabs, and they start being kind of rude and snotty, the first thing that I do is I put the camera down, I walk over to him and I go, look, are you okay? Do you need water? Do you need to go to the bathroom? Are you happy with this outfit, this location, with this pose? Find out what the problem is. And oftentimes, if you come at them, just softly and gently and from a place of genuine caring, they're going to drop that aggression. They're going to tell you what the problem is, and they're going to give you a chance to fix it. And when you fix it, well, everything goes back on track. Your photo shoot is saved, and that aggressive behavior usually just kind of dissipates. So go ahead, empathize, realize that they're a human being, and it will serve you very well in the long run. Now, the next tip I can give you guys is to be flexible. When you're working with a client that starts to get aggressive, oftentimes that's because you're not being flexible. You have this wonderful vision of this amazing picture in your head, and you are going to put this picture out into the world, so help you God, and you're just simply not being flexible and not listening to your client. Now, at the end of the day, these are their pictures, right? And if they are not feeling the vision that is in your head, you have to be flexible enough to kind of change on the fly and realize that that aggression that you are getting bombarded with is really your fault. So as a smash cake photographer, I work with my fair share of toddlers, and sometimes when I'm out on a headshot shoot, well, I'm working with a toddler as well, because that's what my client is acting like. They are acting like a spoiled toddler. And in that case, well, I employ the same techniques I use when working with small children, and that is to redirect and distract. Yeah? That is a tool in every parent's tool bag. If you don't have kids yet, well, you need to learn that tool, because when you do have kids, holy God, is that going to save your butt. Now, it's also going to save your butt when working with aggressive clients, because oftentimes what you can do is just redirect them. If they're giving you attitude and they're giving you problems, then you can say, oh, hey, you know what? The light over there is perfect. Let's move this whole thing over there and try, for another shot. And while you're moving the whole menagerie over there, you're kind of redirecting their negative energy somewhere else. And bonus, you're giving yourself time to breathe. Because let's face it, as human beings can only be bombarded enough by negative energy before it just takes hold and we ourselves start acting in a negative way. So redirect, distract, change something, change the scenery, change outfits, change anything, but just break your client out of that aggressive funk that they're in. All right, so the next tip that I have for you works with all types of clients, all right? When you start getting some negative waves coming off your client, again, it's usually because they're uncomfortable with something or they're nervous in some way. And a lot of times, the only thing you need to do to fight nerves is give people information. For example, if you put somebody in a pose and they're just not feeling it, they're just not sinking into it, it's because they don't understand why they have to hold their arms in such a weird, akimbo, They don't get it because they're not professional models. Now, a lot of the times, all you really have to do is explain the why behind what you're asking them to do. If you say, well, I need you to pose this way because it makes your hips look slimmer, it makes your shoulders look more demure or whatever, the client is going to start to understand that you are on the same page with them. And a lot of that nervous energy that you're getting bombarded with, or that aggression that you're getting bombarded with, it's going to dissipate. It's going to go away because now they understand why you're asking them to hold their chin out and down. Now they get it because you told them why you're doing it. So be as informative as you can with your clients. It does amazing things to fight their nerves and to calm any sort of aggressive behavior. Okay, so this next tip is my favorite tool in the toolbox, and that is diffuse an aggressive situation with humor. As we all know, aggression often comes from tension, and nothing cuts through tension quite like humor, right? Humor just gets right through all of the crap, blows it out of the water, and just bonds you and your client. Because let's face it, if you and your client are laughing together, then you're going to be having a great time together, and all of that aggressive behavior is just going to go away. For example, I once had a bunch of real estate agents come in and they were just acting like overgrown toddlers. And to make matters worse, you could tell that they were fighting amongst themselves before they even got to my studio. But instead of taking it out on each other, they decided to take it out on this guy, right? And I didn't much care for that. Now, I went ahead and started going through all the tips on today's list. I started to ask them what was wrong and empathize and do all the things that we've already talked about. And I can honestly tell you that nothing was working until I landed on Diffuse with humor. Now, they were being kind of petty with each other. They were kind of henpecking each other, and somebody said something, and my assistant off the cuff just said, "That's what she said." And trust me, it was off color, but it was funny. And the whole room exploded, and you could just, it was almost somebody deflated a balloon. The tension just dropped out of the room. Now, I'm not suggesting you tell your clients off-color jokes like we did. That was a one-off. That was a one-time thing. But humor does work. So the next time you want to diffuse aggression and nothing's really working, try humor. Just, be careful with it. Okay, so the next one is positive reinforcement. Now, if you've got a client that is acting a little aggressive and they actually acquiesce to something, like maybe they step into a pose that you ask them to without giving you any crap, then go ahead and give them a little positive reinforcement and say, "Oh, that looks amazing. Perfect." And then ask them to do something small again, like, "Can you tilt your head just a little bit this way?" "Perfect. Thank you." And use those words, "Perfect. Good. Thank you. Awesome. That looks great." Use those tiny words to give them that positive reinforcement, and it does a lot to kind of melt the ice, so to speak, right? It puts their attitude back in check because now they know they're doing a great job, and now they know you're there helping them do that great job. So I'm using positive reinforcement as a way to direct the shoot in the direction I want to go, and as a way of making the client feel better. And it's an amazing tool that I highly suggest you guys take the time to learn how to implement. All right, well, last but not least, this is the biggest words of advice, the biggest tip on how to deal with aggressive clients that I could possibly give you. And it is simply this: keep a sense of perspective. All right, guys, there was a photo shoot I was on one time. It was a high school senior portrait shoot. And the girl I was shooting, she was 17 years old, and she was acting like an absolute snot. I'm not in the habit of calling children the B word, but let's be legit, this kid was acting like one, right? So what did I do? Well, I decided to reach into today's list and redirect and distract, and I sent her in to go change her clothes. Now, while she was in there changing her clothes, what was I doing? I was outside taking a deep breath. I was just kind of trying to find my center. And when I did that, I had enough time to finally have an epiphany. And that was this. If the worst thing that happened to me that day was a high school girl was mean to me, I think I'm going to be okay. At the end of the day, I got through the shoot just fine and the photos were amazing. And I guess that's really all that mattered. But I wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for that sense of perspective that I took time to find. So find your sense of perspective. Have your epiphany moment and just realize that if the worst thing that happens to you that day is that a client is mean to you, you're going to be fine. So on the tail of my mean girl experience with that high school girl, I do want to kind of take it to a more serious place. If the client's behavior becomes emotionally abusive or physically threatening or even violent, then at that point you need to just leave. You need to just grab your team and get the hell out of there because your safety is of the utmost importance. All right. Don't even bother with the rest of the tips on today's list. Just get yourself and your team out of there. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for checking out today's video on how to deal with aggressive people. I truly appreciate you hanging out with me. I'm Daniel Troutman with thesmashcake.com and troutmanphotography.com, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.